Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Cynthia Toolin-Wilson, and I'm here on my show, Author to Author, with Brother Carmel Duca, MC, and he's written a very interesting book called Redeemed by Beauty. How are you tonight, brother?
Good.
Good.
How are you?
I'm good, too. Can't complain.
Yeah.
So it's always exciting to be talking to someone on the other side of the world about something that they wrote. That's really, that's a high for me. It's great. So
And thanks for inviting.
Oh yes, I'm glad to have you here. So if you want to start us with prayer, then we can move on to the actual interview.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. I would like to start with a prayer, which is actually written by Tagore, the Indian writer. No? Mm-hmm. And this is my prayer to thee, my Lord. Strike at the root of penury in my heart. Give me the strength lightly to bear my joys and sorrows. Give me the strength never to disown the poor or bend my knees before insolent might. Give me the strength to raise my mind high above daily trifles. And give me the strength to surrender my strength to thy will with love. And it shall be my endeavor to reveal thee in my actions, knowing it is thy power which gives me strength to act. Amen.
Amen. That's a beautiful prayer.
It is. It is.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
So I wasn't aware of the prayer or of the person who wrote it.
It's Rabindranath Tagore. He's the literature Nobel Prize winner from Calcutta, from West Bengal, and I think it was early 1900s, 1918 or 1922.
Mm-hmm.
And he got the literature prize for the Gitanjali, book called Gitanjali.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow, that's good. I'm going to have to start looking into that. That sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Beautiful prayer.
Yes.
It really is. Yeah. So it's funny, that we're all so many Catholics, so many Christians, and yet we don't really know some marvelous writers or, really holy people because of a different culture. It's kind of sad,
Or different religion, because he wasn't Christian.
Oh, okay.
No, he was a Hindu.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It is.
It's God is the God of all people.
Exactly. Yeah. But he was a philosopher. He was a writer. He was a poet. He was a painter. It was a whole family of arts also.
Mm-hmm.
The whole family. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To write a prayer like that, he must have been a truly holy man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was.
So that's good. So I'm really pretty ignorant of anything that's outside of the borders of the United States. but I'm going to look into him because that really was interesting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Mm-hmm. So you've written this book, and what was it that led you to write it?
Actually, it wasn't my initiative to write the book. I was commissioned.
Mm-hmm.
I was commissioned by the congregation I belong to, which is the Missionaries of Charity Brothers, to write the book about our co-founder, who is called Brother Andrew. Which I was interested also to do it.
Yes.
And I think it was both ways. They knew that I would have been interested, and So they asked me to do it. The thing is that most probably we will talk about this, but Brother Andrew, he left the brothers. So the last 10 years of his life, he went back to his hometown in Melbourne, Australia, and he spent his last 10 to 12 years there. So we brothers, even though he's our co-founder, we didn't know much about those 10 to 12 years. So it was high time that we start collecting information of what he did, where he was, and also considering that his brothers and sisters, they were dying, and we wanted first-hand information from them, no? So I, in a way, I was running against time also. When I went to India to start writing the book, by that time his last sister had died. So the last ones who were there, they are nephews and nieces, which I could get at least information from them. So that was the reason, and also to start or to continue collecting the archives for our congregation. And that's how the book came out.
Still, that's it's good that they chose you to do that, and it's it sounds like it's an exciting venture, so to speak, to find out what has happened to the founder over time.
I was happy that I was chosen, but on the side, I'm no journalist, and I'm no professional writer. I'm neither.
Okay.
But again, as one Italian writer, Oriana Fallaci, used to say, I just interview history.
Oh, I like that.
So I took that in mind, and I said, I'm going to interview history. It's not my history. It's not my book in a way. It's I try to let people who knew Andrew to speak in the book, to talk about him.
So, how many people did you interview? How long did it take?
Actually 5.5 years ago, I was here in Peru again. And I got the phone call from the General Superior to go to India. He asked me whether I would do it, to go to India and research and write the book. Immediately I said yes. One, because I love India, and the other one because I love Andrew. I never met him, but I was always interested to know about him and read about him and read his writings. So the idea was to go there for 1 year. And it took me 5.
Wow.
It took me 5. I interviewed over 250, between 250 and 300 people, between brothers of my congregation, sisters of my congregation, ex-brothers, former brothers and former sisters, and his family members, co-workers. We call co-workers those volunteers who help us in our work. Co-workers, friends, and people who used to go for his retreats when he was in Australia. So it was a whole spectrum of people, which was interesting.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
So, that's quite a project.
Yeah, interesting, and it was not easy because I was dealing mostly with an Asian culture, mostly Indian and somewhat Korean also, because he spent a number of years in Korea, in and out, and it was hard because in those cultures, sort of authorities are held as high figures. So to try to get people to tell me things which they liked in him and maybe things which they did not like in him, it wasn't easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't easy to tease things from out of them.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But it was
Yeah.
interesting. I love doing it, you know?
That's good.
Yeah.
So 5 years is a long time.
It was. Also, in between there was the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
So I was lucky to do most of the going abroad, going around India. And also I went to some places in Africa and Australia and some other places in Asia like Korea and Cambodia. So I was lucky to have done those things before the pandemic started.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it was 5 years. On a side, sort of with another brother, we also tried to, apart from the book, to build up the archives. You know? So while I was going around, I was collecting things about him, like audio talks, video talks, which are little, which are few. But audio talks, I managed to get over 200 audio talks, which he gave.
Wow.
No, which there's a wealth in it.
Yeah.
Letters. We have over 1,000 letters which he wrote. Letters to the congregation, to people at large, and also personal letters to people. Collecting those, collecting photos, collecting his. We were lucky that when he died in the year 2000, he died at our sister's house in Melbourne, and for 18 years they kept his things there. So we were lucky.
Yeah.
I was lucky to be able to get a lot of things from the archives of the Jesuits, because he was a Jesuit before he founded us.
Oh, okay.
So even the Jesuits, they had the foresight to keep his letters, which he used to send from India to Australia to them, and that we now have a copy of those. And there's a lot of history. There's a lot of personality in those letters.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's really great. I mean, you really hit a treasure trove there.
Yeah.
I could imagine it going the exact opposite. Nothing.
Exactly.
You're very lucky.
Yeah. I was lucky.
Yeah, I think God wanted this to be written.
I hope so.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think of being able to find that much material, that's amazing. From Jesuits, from North Korea, from India. I mean, it's like, I don't know that things like that are often kept, once somebody has moved on. So it's really great.
Yeah. We are lucky. Yeah.
Or blessed.
Or blessed. Well, both.
Yes. So, so you were involved with this for 5 years. Now, did that include the writing, or was that just doing the research, or the whole thing?
Yeah, it's the whole thing. It's a whole. Yeah. I don't know whether I should say at this point something about him or.
Sure. Yeah.
Because the person is interesting.
Yes.
The person is interesting because he goes from being a gambler to being a Jesuit to being an MC brother. And then, as he says, to become a troubadour and eventually a sannyasi.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so there are these phases in his life. Even the book, I try to sort of divide the book into these aspects of his life, but with two interludes. No,
Mhm.
and true. Okay, he was born in Australia in 1928. That
Mhm.
was after First World War, and
Mhm.
then he matriculated after the Second World War. So
Mhm.
he was born in between the two, and he was born 2 weeks after one of his sisters died. Uh,
Uh,
but they knew that she was going to die. No, she
mhm.
was sick. So he came 10 years after his younger sister.
Mhm.
So it's as if he came as a substitute for the loss of the other one.
Oh,
No? I think
yeah.
it used to happen in those days.
Mhm.
No? So we start with all these coincidences in inverted
Mhm.
commas, in quotes, no, which are no coincidences.
Right.
He went to a Jesuit school. He graduated from high school, but one of his, I would say, one of his major talents was gambling on horses.
Oh,
No, yeah,
successfully?
and successfully for a time.
Wow.
But he says in 1951, the day of reckoning came when he lost everything on a horse.
Oh boy. Yeah.
He lost everything on a horse. I even managed to get the name of the horse.
Good for you. That's good.
And,
That's good detective work.
and I even managed to get the photo finish of that race.
Oh.
Because he says in an interview, he says that horse had to win that day,
Mhm.
but it did not. So for some reason, it did not win.
Yeah.
If that horse would have won, I don't think we would have been here talking about Brother Andrew today.
Oh dear.
Because he would have gone on gambling.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, he had already been thinking of some kind of vocation before the day of reckoning.
Yeah.
But then it happened that he went for a meeting with a Jesuit, and after the meeting he talked to him and he told him, I would like to be a Jesuit. So after a few months, he entered the novitiate in Melbourne. He took vows after 2 years, and after a few months he volunteered to go to India as a Jesuit, as a young Jesuit. This was 1954. So between 1954 and 1965, he's a Jesuit in India. He did all his studies there, but from the start of going to India, he wanted to go and live as a Jesuit in one of the slum areas in Delhi. But his superiors always told him, no, wait. First wait for ordination, and then wait up until you take final vows during tertianship, you can decide. Eventually in 1965, okay, in 1962, he hears Mother Teresa speaking, but he does not talk to her. In 1965, in November, now this time he's giving a talk about social issues in India, and in the same conference, there's Mother Teresa who's giving another talk about poverty or social issues. I don't remember what. And it's there that they talk, no? And most probably she tells him about the small group of brothers which she had founded a couple of years before in Calcutta. Strangely enough, coincidentally enough, he was ordained a priest on the 25th of March in 1963, the same day when Mother started the Brothers in Calcutta.
Wow.
That is,
That's not a coincidence.
I know. I say coincidence. I say coincidence not to spiritualize things. But yeah, it's not coincidence.
Yeah.
So in December, like after a few weeks, he goes to Calcutta, just to see what these young brothers are doing for the poor.
Mm-hmm.
He had no intention to join them.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But while he was there, Mother, she asked him, she told him, I'm looking for a priest to take over the guidance of these young men. Would you do it?
Mm-hmm.
And he said yes, immediately. I don't know whether it was the gambling part which kicked in, but he said yes immediately. There will be, in his lifetime, there will be a lot of these which can be read as impulsive decisions, which nowadays I don't think they were impulsive. No?
That's what I was thinking. They're probably direct guidance from God.
Yeah, there was already the thinking, there was already the desire to do something with the poor. No, maybe this was the last sign which he needed, which we only see this last decision. We don't see the sermon which was happening before.
Right.
This was December 65. He decided on the 31st December 1965. That was the day I was born.
Oh.
No, that
might be a coincidence.
So then by February he got the permissions from the Jesuits. In that time it was Pedro Arrupe still the general. And on the 19th of February 1966 he joined this small group of young men, brothers, whom Mother had started. And they were still living with the sisters. And obviously, Andrew, by the way, he was not called Andrew. He changed his name when he came to the brothers.
Okay.
His name was Ian Travers-Ball. So that day he changed the name to Andrew. Obviously, being Jesuit, being a priest, he's not going to be too happy living under the guidance of the sisters.
Right.
So immediately when he came, he started looking for a place to move out from the sisters. Also, he was not going to be told how to run the brothers. No, that was in charge.
Right.
And in fact, after a month or a month and a half ago, he invited Mother for Monday, Thursday Mass. No? And she came for Mass. She came like an hour early, and while they were talking, she found out that these young brothers, they were sleeping on the terrace because it was too hot. It was March, April in Calcutta, where the heat is extreme.
Okay.
So she told Andrew, no, the brothers, they should sleep in the common dormitory. And he told her, I'm in charge now.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Yes. And she did not like that. And what she did, she took her bag and she left. She did not stay for Mass.
Oh. That's not a good sign.
Yes. And Andrew, in one of his talks, he says, it was one of my worst experience during Mass because he was troubled. No? But later on, she comes back, she writes a note, she calls the brothers, and she tells him, when I chose you, I had trust in you. You go ahead, you're in charge of the brothers.
Good.
She even talked to the brothers. He does not know what she told them. They're going to have a lot of these arguments in the course of time. But it's interesting. They are arguments about these small issues. There were never arguments about the spirit of the congregation. There were never arguments about the spirituality, about the charism. It's what at one point he calls her, well, in a letter, he calls her, she's a daughter of Eve. No? Meaning she's human.
Yeah.
As much as he was the son of Adam. No, and they're both. So it's their humanity, it's their personality, which was it was never about the spirit, the spirituality, the charisma.
No.
Or the poor. No, they were on the same wavelength. So between 66, he started guiding the brothers, he started directing the brothers, still in Calcutta. And then in 1971, from 54 till 71, he has not been back to Australia. So he told the brothers, I see that you are more stable now. You can manage on your own for a couple of months. I'll go to Australia to visit my family. At that time, both his mother and his father were dead. But in 71, it did not happen because there was the war of Bangladesh going on.
Yeah.
So he stayed in Calcutta, and he managed to go to Australia in 1972. He stayed there for 4 months, after which, coming back to India, he stopped in Vietnam to see the situation in Vietnam. And considering what Vietnam was going through, and considering the relation, I would say the relationship between Australia and Vietnam also. Considering in the 50s, Vietnam, they had a president who was Catholic, and Australia was supporting him. And I'm sure that Andrew knew what was going on. And he decided to open Vietnam, which was also a good place for non-Indians, mainly young people from America, were already writing to Andrew, asking him to come and join the brothers. India was not giving visas, or it was difficult to get a visa to go to India. So he was inviting them to come to Vietnam, which was a good place. He liked Vietnam. No, he was hooked on Vietnam. He liked the people. He liked the place. And after 2 years, when the brothers, they were evacuated, it was heart-wrenching for him to come out of it. To the extent that all the brothers, they had to leave, and he stayed on his own. And in parentheses, while the brothers, they were in Vietnam, and while he was in Vietnam, then Caritas from Cambodia, CRS from Cambodia, they started asking the brothers to go there also, which they did. So they started opening houses in Cambodia also, but they were evacuated before Vietnam. But again, Andrew, he loved Vietnam to the extent that from March 1976 till August, he stayed there. 75. He stayed there on his own. Trying as much as possible to keep the houses. They were homes for women, for widows, for unwed mothers with their children, and he liked that apostolate, being with the poor and not just working with the poor, but living with them. Eventually, he had to come back. He had to come out, and he came back to India, but the way India developed, the way the brothers developed in India, it was more structured. And that one, it's not that he did not like it, but he would not stay there. So eventually in 76, he moved, he took his base in Hong Kong for 2 reasons. One, also because getting a visa to go back to India, it was hard. Even though he's from the Commonwealth. So Hong Kong, it was good for him because he could come in and out. But he had Hong Kong in mind because he was hoping that the day communism falls, he can go back. And so he started opening houses between Hong Kong, Taiwan, South Korea, Philippines, Japan, in that belt. Which is close enough to China, close enough to Cambodia, Vietnam. But it never happened that he could go back. There was no way. So he stayed in Hong Kong. Now, this is where I say his gambling kicks in, but not the gambling on horses, but the gambling, taking of the risks, risks even with brothers. No, in 1976, the brothers, they had 13 houses, 13 communities, and in 10 years, in 1986, they had 90 communities.
Wow.
His idea was, you go, you see the needs, you open a community. He was sending 2 brothers, unfortunately with little formation, to open communities. He used to call it the Exodus formation. You form yourself while on the go, in a way. It's Exodus. These were the 70s, 80s. Young people, they were ready to take risks also. I think more than us nowadays. So it's not only him who was proposing the opening of houses, but the young brothers, they were ready to do it. There was that readiness, there was that enthusiasm to do it.
Right.
Like, for instance, the American brothers who were in Vietnam at that time, eventually they ended up in Los Angeles. And from Los Angeles, then they opened up houses in Central America and South America and the Caribbean. So there was this big expansion, whole expansion. Unfortunately, this big expansion, it comes with a price.
Yeah.
No? So Andrew, he's all over the place. He does not have sort of he does have a base, but he does not have his community. So he's drinking more.
Oh, that's not good.
That's not good.
Yeah.
He's drinking more. I'm not going to in the book, I try to see why he is drinking more. No? And it could be, I don't know, it could be like a case of PTSD out of Vietnam. All the Australians I meet, they say, well, Australians, they drink. Which could be true, and it could be a justification. Whatever, but Andrew was drinking. So in 1986, after the general chapter, after 20 years of him being, what is it called, the general superior, he asked to step down. He said, it's time that somebody else takes the job. And it was a good move. But after the chapter, the new leadership, they faced him, they confronted him with his drinking. And he said, I don't consider myself as an alcoholic. And the option was, he asked for a dispensation. So he left the brothers. He left the brothers. Now, I see that there were other things going on. One is that he wanted to leave the brothers. Once he saw that the brothers, they were formed, once he saw that the brothers, they could walk on their own, it was time for him to move on. I saw this a lot in India with Jesuits. The Jesuits, they go to a village, they start forming a community, maybe they build a church, and after a few years, they leave the church to the diocese and they move on to somewhere else. Which it was the case of Andrew. No, it was the case of Andrew. Sort of the brothers are formed, I move. And at the same time, I believe there were also politics going on.
Oh, there's always politics.
Yes, between the brothers in America and him. Yes. So it could also have been a tit for tat. You tell us about these things, we tell you about your alcohol consumption. No, so there's a lot going on. It's not just his alcohol. No.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1987, he goes back to Australia as a priest,
Mm-hmm.
and he gives retreats, he gives missions, he gives
Mm-hmm.
talks, and
Mm-hmm.
people. What is interesting is that all the people I met in Australia
Mm-hmm.
told me, we don't believe he was an alcoholic. He was not drinking here.
Yeah.
So again,
Yeah.
the aim of the book is not to decide whether he was an alcoholic or whether he was not an
All right.
alcoholic,
Mm-hmm.
but it gives context to the man.
Mm-hmm.
No,
It does. Yeah.
it does. Because why I'm saying this, because he always considered himself as a broken person, as a fragile person, as an unfaithful person who God does good things through him. So
That's interesting.
yeah, and that's something which he left to us brothers. No,
Mm-hmm.
he used to insist a lot. We are incompetent. We are fragile. We are wounded. We are broken. No,
Mm-hmm.
but God is going to do good things through us if we let him.
Mm-hmm.
If we are honest about who we are.
Mm-hmm.
No, and that is one of the biggest legacies which he left us brothers.
Mm-hmm.
No, the other thing is, come to God as you are.
I like that.
Yeah,
That's good. That's
okay.
a good saying.
Me too.
Yeah.
There's no need. There's no need to clean yourself in order to come in front of God. No,
Yeah.
for him it's you come as you are. This is who you are.
Yeah.
No, knowing that you need His mercy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Knowing and being aware that you can't do it on your own. That you need His help and you need His mercy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think the gambling thing and the alcohol things gives context to this, to the men. And I believe, not because it's my book, but I believe it could give light and hope to people who are passing through the same things.
Mm-hmm.
Here you have a man who considers himself to be unfaithful, who considers himself to be broken and a compulsive gambler, no, and yet he has a relationship with a higher power. He has a relationship with God, and it's a deep relationship he has. No, and that's one of the messages which I hope people can get through the book. No,
that's really an important point.
Yeah.
You know, because so many people just look at themselves as human wreckage.
Yeah.
And, you know, they feel like they've got to get out of the human wreckage mode before they can do anything like move forward towards God. Exactly. You know, it's like they just don't understand how that relationship works, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
And for Andrew, it's exactly at that point where he meets God.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's at that point where he meets God and he meets the poor. For instance, a case in point, he never spoke Korean.
Wow.
And yet he founded another group in Korea for women with physical, can I say disabilities? I don't know what's the correct word, but who wanted to become religious, but because of the disabilities, they could never become religious. So he started this group. They consider himself as a co-founder also. And yet he could not speak a word of Korean. But what did they see in him? No?
Well, I bet they see God. God is helping him to do these things, obviously. No one could do these on their own.
Yeah, exactly. Sort of, they could see somebody who gave them hope.
Yes.
No? Which go beyond words.
Yes.
He could not communicate with them directly. He needed an interpreter. So yeah, it's that hope, which he could instill in us, Also, we brothers, we tend to take it, because we're poor, we're fragile, and we cannot do anything, and we stop at that. We justify ourselves because our founder said that we're fragile. But what he used to say is, yes, we're fragile, we're wounded, we're broken. But at the same time, is that brokenness which shows us that we need God's help. And it's through that brokenness that we can identify with the people we work with.
The brokenness enables you to find the strength to ask God for help.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And when he says I'm broken or I'm wounded, I believe that he knew what he was saying. It wasn't any false humility. He had a self-knowledge of who he was and what he was capable of doing, most probably. Yeah.
What a fascinating life. Really.
It is, or it was,
Yeah.
It was. Another, for instance, another thing which he gave us is a spirituality which is based on the incarnation. For him, the fact that Jesus became man made a lot of sense because Jesus became a man in a family like us. He had to work like us, and he suffered like us. Well, he suffered more than us, but he knew what suffering was. So it's not a spirituality of angels or whatever. No, it's it's down to earth. Which is down to earth. And another thing which I would say that he gave us, brothers, is to have a life with a content for others.
That's good.
Hoping that my life would have content for the poor whom I meet, or the not so poor whom I meet, or the rich whom I meet. But at the same time, that the life of these people, even the poor, they have content for me.
So he understood the relationships between people at a very deep level. I
believe so.
I
believe so. And that's what made him human. That's what made him fragile. That's what made him vulnerable.
Well, fragile and vulnerable can sometimes be very useful. Because you can really help people as well as receive help. So it's they're not necessarily bad words.
No.
But in this country, they are.
Exactly.
But I don't think they're necessarily bad words.
No. There is also the finding beauty in misery with Andrew. Andrew, he was a good writer. He was a brilliant writer. And he could convey something which he sees, a small gesture by a small boy playing with a ball, and he could convey such a message and extrapolate a whole message and meditation on such a boy. And he was able to capture beauty in misery. And there is a beautiful letter which he wrote in 1971 when he decided to spend a night in Howrah Station in Calcutta,
Mm-hmm.
Howrah Station in it still is, but in 1971, it was worse, where you had thousands of people living in the station. No, it's one of the biggest stations in India. It's the biggest in Calcutta. So he decides to do a night vigil there during an 8-day retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And he sees this poor family, a mother with 5 children, no, and he has his meditation on them. They come in the evening, they come in the night, they have pieces of bread which they might have brought from a restaurant, left over from a restaurant, and they sit down, they eat, they wash their pots, little pots they have, and he says, but it wasn't a sad meal.
Mm-hmm.
Because then the young boy, a 5-6-year-old boy, he just gets up from the floor and he starts dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, that's where the song, dance wherever you may be, I am the Lord of the dance that he made sense for him. That at that very moment.
Yeah.
No?
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. For me, it's one of the beautiful letters which Andrew left us.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, but it's this capturing of beauty amidst misery, amidst poverty, amidst suffering.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of that, and I think what happens is people don't know how to see it. They're overwhelmed by what they see as sadness, and they can't see any joy or anything except that. They're overwhelmed with the negative, as opposed to seeing the positive. Yeah. And I think that's just a unfortunate human trait in many of us.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of joy. I mean, I've seen many people that have lived in poverty, and not like in India, but poverty United States style, which is nothing like what I think we're talking about. But it's all relative, because you see that you don't have things that others see, and they just focus on the unhappiness. But it's not unusual for children to not even realize this. They're just happy little kids, but no one focuses on that. They focus on that, they have dirty clothes or something.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's sad how so often we have blinders on our eyes.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
When eventually he goes back to Australia, it's an interesting phase in his life, because it seems that Australia, the changes of Vatican Council II, they came later than Europe or America.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the 80s, and he's finding people, true Catholics, don't find a place in the Catholic Church now.
Mm.
Because there are priests who are doubting the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist.
Mm.
There are priests who they're not in favor of these older women going and saying the rosary in the church, or going to the church and doing their devotions. So he's faced with such a situation of the church in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually to these people he's ministering to, to the ones who are true Catholics. Well, they are good Catholics, and they cannot even find a place in the same church.
Yeah,
which is interesting. He calls it a culture of death. Both is in Australia, and he's ministering to these people who are living in this culture.
Mm-hmm.
No? And he's giving hope to these people. No? So he goes around, he gives retreats, he gives missions. There's a lot of prayer meetings happening in private houses.
Mm-hmm.
No? And he attends these.
Mm-hmm.
That's his mission. again, he's all over the place. He's being asked even to give retreats in Pakistan, in Canada, in Cambodia. But I see a difference of his going and comings between 76 and 86, when he's opening houses here and there, and it's a crazy going and coming, from the going and comings in between 86 and 2000. Even though he's all over the place, it's a slower pace, it's a more contemplative pace. That's why he calls himself a sannyasi now. A sannyasi, it's the fourth stage of the Hindus where they renounce everything. They're still in the world. They're still part of the world, but there's a renunciation of everything. And it's interesting, it's as if Andrew, he's now living the MC vocation to the fullest, now he left the brothers. It's amazing. He has nothing. Even before he didn't have anything, but he has a small bag and he goes around wherever they call him to give retreats. No? Eventually in middle of September in 2000, no, he goes to our sisters in Melbourne and he tells them, I've been diagnosed with stomach cancer. Can I come and die here? So he comes back to the MC family, and then in 2 weeks he dies. And he dies on the 4th of October, year 2000. Again, it's symbolic because usually our sisters, they don't take anybody to come and die in their home. They only take the poorest of the poor. So it's quite symbolic that he dies as a poor man. No? In one of our houses, sisters' houses. No?
Boy, I'll tell you, that is some life. Yeah.
But saying all these things, he says Vietnam, it was pivotal for him.
I can understand that. This is going to sound a little bizarre, but I was teaching at Holy Apostles College and Seminary in Cromwell, and we had a huge, for a small college, we had a huge number of Vietnamese. They came, sisters, brothers, some seminarians and priests. Those are the nicest people I've ever met in my life as a group. And I mean, initially it's very difficult because most of them didn't speak hardly any English, but they had these angelic smiles. And, they were interested in establishing relationships, not just learning from a professor, but being with the professor in a relationship. And, so I left at the end of last September because my husband was dying. And the sisters and the brothers and the fathers wrote cards to me, even though I was gone. They've kept in touch with me because they had established, we had a relationship beyond just teacher-student. Their culture, it must be so relationally based. They're just beautiful people. Beautiful people.
Yeah. Years later, he says that leaving Vietnam or leaving the brothers, it wasn't as hard as leaving Vietnam.
Yeah, I can believe it.
And yet, leaving Vietnam prepared him for leaving the brothers. He gives the example from Solzhenitsyn. I think it's the book, The Twin Circle. I'm not sure about the name. But he speaks about Solzhenitsyn's book, about some doctors who were giving a better treatment while they were being in a camp, in one of those work camps. but then at one point they lost the privileges, they did something, but for them losing those privileges, they weren't as bad as losing their families in the first place.
Yeah.
So even for him, leaving the brothers, it was hard, but it wasn't as hard as leaving Vietnam.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the first one prepared him.
Yeah.
Mind you, I'm talking about these things about poverty and misery and painful things and war and whatever. And Andrew, he had a common sense. He was earthy, by his own words, and he had a sense of humor. It seems like Australians, he has a lyrical sense of humor. And there are interesting stories about his sense of humor, which you say, oh my, where did you get that? Which are in the book.
Yeah.
And one of them, I don't know whether I can say a swear word here.
Yes, you can. We understand you're not swearing, you're just repeating.
Okay. Actually, it's not a swear word, but
yeah.
He's visiting a Jesuit, a fellow Jesuit in one of the villages in India. And usually, if it's the first time that you're visiting a village, usually the people, they come out of the village and they escort you dancing inside the village. The young girls, they escort you as a visitor in dance. And they sit you on a podium and they garland you, and there's a lot of things for welcoming. And at one point, Andrew, he moves over to this Jesuit and he tells him, if they only knew the bastards we are. And the other Jesuits, he tells him, they know, but they still love us.
My word.
Yeah. So, and there are a lot more which I did not dare to put them in the book.
That's funny. Oh my word.
Yeah. But this is Andrew. With all his contradictions, brothers in the congregation, they all say that he was a father figure for them and he loved them so much and they felt loved and they felt welcomed by him. At the same time, they used to say, oh yes, he even kicked one of the novices out when he did not wear the proper cross. Just for Or they used to say when he used to be angry, he would be red in his face. So yeah, he's all these facets of person, and that makes him interesting, I guess. I think it was Thomas Merton, who said one of the first signs of a saint may well be the fact that other people do not know what to make out of this man.
Yeah, that could be. Boy, there's probably some truth to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, wow, that man had quite a life, I'll tell you. It's a fascinating story.
Yeah. He had a devotion. Well, not obviously. He had a devotion to Mary, to the Eucharist, to Saint Joseph, to the Pope. Which became stronger as time went by. When he became older, those things became stronger. But he had a devotion to Eileen O'Connor and to Edith Stein. Eileen O'Connor. She died when she was 29. She was Australian. She was maybe 4 feet tall. When she was a baby, she fell from the pram, from the pusher. What do you call it there? I don't know.
Yeah, carriage here. Oh, stroller. Yes.
she fell, so she never grew. So she had an impediment in her body, and from her bed, she tried to found the Brown Sisters, they are called in Australia, the Brown Nurses, sorry.
Okay.
And they were nurses, not in a hospital, but they would go directly to the people in their house. So if a woman just gave birth now, they would go and they take care of the other children while she nurses the baby.
Yeah.
She died when she was 29.
Oh, 29, yeah.
So he had a devotion to her. Out of her brokenness, this small group of women came out. And the other one, Edith Stein, and he always mentions a story. It seems that Edith Stein, once she went into a cathedral and she saw this common woman praying, and she was touched by the relationship she saw in that devotion, in that woman praying in that cathedral. Edith Stein, having been a professor, having been a philosopher, and looking for God through her books, and yet found God through that common little woman.
Yeah.
And he mentions that particular part. So, and it's always for Andrew. It's always these little people doing little things. Doing little things for other people. And not big things.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good thing to look for.
Yeah.
Because I tell you, there's an awful lot of people that do an awful lot of good, and no one even sees them. You know? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but God certainly does.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So now you see why I enjoyed writing the book.
Oh, yes.
Or researching the book.
Yeah, well, it's a fascinating story. I mean, that man had such a great life, I think. I mean, he may not have thought of it as great, but when you think of all the things that he did and all the places he was and all the people he influenced, it's really something. The impact that one person can have, when God uses them is incredible. Yeah. It's truly incredible. And I mean, you're talking about a man that was in several countries, influencing people. And it's, that is the work of God.
Yeah. A few weeks ago, I started reading the biography or autobiography of Jacques Lucerian. Was a blind man in France. I haven't finished it yet. It's called There Was Light. And in the beginning, he says, he tells this person who asked him to write the biography, he says, when you said to me, tell me the story of your life, I was not eager to begin. But when you added, what I care most about is learning your reasons for loving life, then I became eager, for that was a real subject. And when I was asked by the brothers to write the book, to write the biography, so I said, I cannot write a biography. Brother Andrew was born on this day and he did this and this. It's what pushed him in life, what moved him. And I said, I think that's what was interesting for me, to try to go into this man and see the reasons why he acted the way he acted. Or why he took those decisions, or why was he why did he love people so much? Why did he love the poor so much? Why did he love the broken people so much? What was the reason behind this? And that's what made it interesting. Because just giving facts, it's I think anybody can do that. I think even the computer nowadays, they can do that. But to find what moved this man.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think he had a pure heart.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that can do good things. It can have tremendous impact.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I believe I'm in a way, I'm lucky that I never met him.
Yeah, that would have probably changed your outlook. Yeah.
So I try to be objective.
Mm-hmm.
The man as he was.
Mm-hmm.
With his flaws and his strengths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's good. That's, really. It's not easy to do, I don't think, but, it seems like you've succeeded in doing it.
I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a story to remember. I mean, really, all over these different countries, doing all these different things, and having his own brokenness at times. It's just it really just shows how much a relationship with God can have an effect on a person who's willing to accept it.
Yeah.
And it is amazing to me sometimes when I see things like that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And it gives hope.
It does, yeah.
It does.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen people that really, I grew up now, obviously, this isn't India, it's the United States. Poverty here is not anything like your poverty. But here, I mean, it's relative, of course. So I was raised in extreme poverty. And when I hear about what people go through in other countries, it's like, we had it easy. It really, it's true. So extreme poverty in the United States is nothing like in many countries. But still, it does affect a person. And because I think it's the relativity. You can see that other people have more food, better food, easier life, whatever, better house, whatever, as opposed to living in a rundown apartment or something. So, I mean, the relativity is always something that we cannot forget, even within a place like the United States, where poverty is nothing compared to some places in the world. But it does affect you. And, I can imagine this man just going around helping people that are in poverty and, just giving them a little, he was giving them a little hope, founding these organizations, things like that. It's a good life he had, I think, even if he wouldn't have agreed. So it's an interesting story.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's there's so much in the world. I often wonder, so much wealth, so many places with food and with beauty and medicines and things like that, and yet we can't seem to get to the point of distributing things in such a way that people have what they need.
Yeah.
It's a sad thing, and I somehow suspect that it's not because we can't figure it out. It's probably greed, and and we know that comes from Satan.
Yeah.
So
it was Gandhi who said there's enough for everybody's need.
Yes, there is.
But not for everybody's greed.
Yeah, but even for the need, a lot of people don't get what they need. It's a terrible thing.
Yeah, but mentioning the different types of poverty in America or in the Western world and India. Actually, I'm not in India right now. I'm in Peru.
Oh, okay.
I came out of India 3 months ago.
Okay.
But I remember what one Indian brother said when he was in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
He said, in India, we have houseless.
Yeah.
But in Los Angeles, there are homeless.
Yeah, that's true.
Because even if a family is living on the footpath in Calcutta, they still have a home.
Yeah.
Still together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's wise. That's a very wise statement, because there is I think, a serious breakdown in relationships here.
Yeah.
So we have now, most people have at least some money, but the relationships are not necessarily good or even existent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a sad thing, but that struggle between good and evil that we see in our social lives, it's not just inside of us. We see it in I love Catholic social teaching. I teach it, and I just think, wow, this is just so weird. We have the teachings here. We know what we should be doing, and yet it doesn't happen for people, or they brand it as communism when you're starting to help everybody. It's crazy. It's crazy. But it is relative, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I should send you my memoir. Sebastian published it, and I wrote it because my beginning of life was really bad. My mother tried to chemically abort me in 1949, and that had, apart from the emotional effects when she told me I was 11, but it did have some physical effects also. And I just look at that, because in some countries I know that people do anything to have their babies saved. They don't want to kill their babies. I know that there are certainly places that they do, but here, even in poverty, you can get by. There is welfare. You can go to a food kitchen, things like that. But people go to killing first.
Yeah.
To killing a human. And so that certainly impacted me. But when I got older, and when I converted to Catholicism, and one of the things that was so appealing to me in Catholicism is that strong pro-life and what is behind that pro-life.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, it's interesting. Here we kill babies even though you have enough food. And in other countries, they're trying to save them no matter what they have to do to get food. It's like, I don't understand what has happened in Western culture, that our ethics, our morals, our way of thinking is really messed up for many. For many.
Yeah.
It is a terrible thing to kill someone just because you don't want them.
Yeah, without exalting sort of other cultures, because I was shocked when I was in Calcutta, and I was in the hospital once, and there was written, asking the sex of a baby, it's against the law.
Oh, because they'd kill the girls?
Because they would kill the girls.
Yeah.
New. No?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's I don't know whether it's the same but you have a similar situation there.
Yeah, the difference here, I don't think it has anything to do with sex, with gender.
Yeah.
It's just, you just don't want a baby.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I look back on my life. I don't mean to turn this interview into me, but I look back on my life and I think I had absolutely zero chance of living, and somehow managed to. And I ended up being a Roman Catholic theologian, and I trained over 200 priests, the men that are priests now. I don't know how many sisters, I don't know how many brothers. I've taught priests, I've taught lay people about the love of God, and I look back and it's like, if my mother had taken one more tablespoon of that medicine, would I have lived? You know, it says something being so wrong at the base of this culture.
Mm.
So, yeah. Anyway.
But at the same time, it's like how we started, all those coincidences in Andrew's life.
Yeah.
And we start seeing all these coincidences in our lives.
Yeah, yeah.
No? And I mention in the book, I mention what Bishop Hilton Deakin, he's an Australian, he was, because he just died in last October. He calls them moments of destiny, you know, where there are moments in our life that they are often experienced as chaotic, but at the end of the day, they have a direction.
Yeah.
Even though we experience them as chaotic, you know, and even in Andrew's life, there are moments they seem to be chaotic, and yet there is direction.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember in Hindu philosophy, there's what it's called Rita, RTA, and there's the cosmic order. And I remember I used to be in the crossroads very close to our house where I was living, and there are 5 streets. It would be complete chaos between buses, cars, auto rickshaws, hand-driven rickshaws, bicycles, motorbikes,
oh my word,
people, dogs, children, and it would be a chaos in this five-point street. And I would be standing there and seeing all this chaos, and at one point it starts moving. And it says everybody knows where he's going, and it flows. You know?
Yeah, yeah. So that's great.
Yeah, I take that as a symbol of life, sort of. There seems to be chaos.
Yeah.
But it's as if there is somebody who can, who's ordering life.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
There's somebody who is ordering our life, you know? Eventually it flows, and eventually we find our place.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have been as avidly pro-life. You know, I mean, I am rock solid pro-life at all stages. And I don't think I would have been in this culture if I hadn't found out what had happened with me.
Yeah.
You know, so it to me, that you're right, that was chaotic to me, but it actually formed me.
Yeah.
Positively.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I never did get along with my mother after that.
Oh.
What can I say? No, I'm human.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, God. But that is an interesting point, you know, that chaos does find order. And it did in my life, too.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah. So, but anyway. So this has been a fascinating interview. I really enjoyed it. It's yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, you've got a good sense of humor. You've got a good way of describing the work you've done. It's
Thanks.
And I think I have a good sense of what Andrew was really like, and that's good.
Thanks.
So I thank you for it.
Well, thank you for inviting me and for being in the program.
You're welcome.
Yeah, my aim is to bring Andrew and get people to know him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating life he had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, if I may say a small thing, as missionaries of charity, we cannot make money out of our work.
Mm-hmm.
So, even as regards royalties of the book, we're not receiving royalties as money,
Mm-hmm.
but we're receiving royalties as printed books,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can distribute them to people.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Who cannot buy them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that we don't need money. It's.
That's good. That's good. Okay.
But the main aim is to get Andrew known.
Yeah.
And it's not anything for canonization or postulation, or it's get this man known. Make him known. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Thanks.
Well, I think you've done a good job at that. Certainly. I mean, when you spend 5 years of your life working on something, that's a good chunk of your life. You've done a good job there.
Yeah. Thanks.
So, it's a good work. So, well, I guess we're just about out of time. So, if you'd like to close us with prayer.
Yeah. Okay. I'll close with a prayer, with rummaging in the things which Andrew left, in the pieces of papers which he left. Mm-hmm. I found a prayer which he wrote in his own handwriting, but it's from Saint Teresa of the Andes, the Carmelite nun. Mm-hmm. I think it's appropriate I would like to finish off with it. No?
Okay, that's great.
Okay. It says, boldly cast your faults and sins into the abyss, into the ocean of divine mercy. Jesus will take compassion on your miseries. He knows your poor heart thoroughly. So don't be afraid, for fear dries up love. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
That's a good prayer.
It is.
Okay. Thank you very much for giving me this interview. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think it'll be valuable to people, as will your book.
I pray so. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.